Hey everybody, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I'm Dana Claiborne, language arts tutor here. And my students and I have been on an essay writing track in which we have been practicing persuasive essays. And so today I want to take this opportunity to discuss how to write examples as part of body paragraphs. Many students, I've noticed, tend to use examples to explain things, and to some degree that's okay, but I wanna kind of sow the seed that an example is actually meant to be part of more of an illustration than it is meant to simply explain. And so I wanted to share some specific tips on including examples in your body paragraphs, or how they fit into the body of an essay in general. Okay, so I'm going to be using my guide, as is my custom, from my screen here today to share a few principles. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look. Okay, I switched over to camera 2. let's get me with us. Oh, wait. Okay, there I am. All right. So this is, a variation of the rules page that I introduce my students to when sharing examples, when preparing to share example of a body paragraph. The first thing I want everybody to understand, many try to use, as I stated, many try to use an example as a way to explain. And sometimes that's okay for a particular case study if that's what you're doing. However, a lot of times, just this is my own personal preference, and I imagine that many other instructors likely feel the same way. And an example doesn't do adequate justice for an explanation. In other words, an example is not something that replaces an explanation. Instead, it should be something that illustrates an explanation. And so these principles that I share are kind of meant to guide students through how to write a good example as part of a body paragraph. And sometimes it can be large to such a degree that it actually can be its own paragraph, but it's still illustrating something that was already discussed. Hopefully that makes sense. And so these principles here are meant to keep the example formal and sounding good in the body paragraph. Okay, so the first principle I share, or the first, I call them rules. First rule I share is to always frame the example. Now, is this required? No, but it's a good thing to do. When I say frame it, all I simply mean is use one sentence to announce it. Use one sentence to just state that it's there. And I say that because what I've seen students do oftentimes is they will try to explain everything in one sentence. Try to put all the information and cram it into one sentence. For example, and then they just kind of give you, they'll say, for example, comma, and then they'll just kind of give you a whole attempt of an explanation. Well, first thing I want you to know is you don't have to cram everything into one sentence. It's okay to use multiple sentences to say and explain each part of what you're trying to explain. So take one sentence to frame it, just to announce that you're giving an example. You see what I mean? Just to announce that you're giving an example and what the specific of your example actually is. The second is probably the second principle here is probably the main thing to remember, which is that examples must be specific to the explanation. So, as I said, the example is not a replacement for the explanation. It's an illustration of something that you stated in the explanation. Okay, so when you're writing a body paragraph, you have topic sentence, which is the main idea. Then you have the explanation, which could include cause and effect or just any kind of explanation of your topic sentence. And then if you want, you can have an example. And so that's about how I show it as far as what can go into a good body paragraph. And so what many students have done is they've just kind of replaced the explanation and just put example as the means by which they explain. So instead of doing that, let the example be something that shows or illustrates what you're saying in the explanation. And so when I say specific to an explanation, what is an example? An example just means a specific. That's what an example is. An example of anything is a specific of it. So if I said, what would be an example, and I'll just go ahead and cut all this now. Or I'll leave it. That's okay. I can leave it. What would be an example of an animal? Okay. And somebody says to me, example of an animal, leopard. Okay. Notice how animal is broad and leopard is a specific of animal. Okay, that's what we mean when we say an example. I'll give another one. Something broad could be food. Now I ask the student, hey, what's an example of food? And they might say to me, bread. Okay, well, bread is a specific type of food, which is why bread would be the example. All right, so if you're writing an example, what that means is that you're choosing something to provide a specific for. So whatever it is you said in your explanation, you're going to become a step more narrow so that you can explain how one particular instance or example fits into the grand scheme of what you're saying. And so it'll make more sense as we get into an example of an example, right? Okay, so number 2, examples must be specific to the explanation. All right, number 3, an example should never contain a hypothetical or nameless person. So often, students like to use Bob, right? They say, for example, Bob does this. Okay, we want to stay away from that kind of language because those kinds of names are informal. You don't want to make up your illustration. Instead, you want to discuss things that are current, and I'm going to show a way to do that. All right, but you want to avoid hypothetical names and making up characters and stuff like that. That's a very informal thing to do. So I encourage students to stay away from that. And then rule number 4 is one that I figure students would like, which is that no example is better than a bad example. So often, if I just say this up front, it's better not to have an example at all than to have a bad one. Because I've seen students write, or I've seen, a student write an excellent body paragraph with an excellent explanation and then ruin it with a bad example, And so you want to avoid that. You want to avoid poisoning your paragraph with examples that just aren't up to par, okay? A good example definitely aids your paragraph, but a bad one can really, really hurt it, okay? So no example is better than a bad example. If you can't think of a good example and a good explanation for that example, then just leave it. Just write your topic sentence and a good explanation and just leave it like that. And, save that corruption inside of your body paragraphs, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at an example of an example. I think that always helps. And so I use this outline box that provides a sample body paragraph, and it asks the persuasive prompt question. It asks the question, this is just a sample. It asks the question, should school be later? Okay, so what did we do? We came up with a thesis statement, and we come up with topic sentences, right? And topic sentences are reasons why for the thesis. Okay, so this topic sentence here is a reason why to support this thesis. So this would be inside of an introduction paragraph, and this is potential body paragraph. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody as we're looking at this sample writing assignment. Okay, should school start later? Here's my thesis. The thesis supports it. Says school should start later in the day. Okay. All right. And then a topic sentence, which is a reason why. It says if school starts later, students will get much needed rest. So that is a reason why we're saying that school should start later in the day. All right. So we're going to write a body. We've written a body paragraph for this topic sentence. Remember, the topic sentence is the first sentence of the body paragraph. And now causes and effects. Right? Causes and effects. So the causes say, and this is causes, which means reasons why the student will get much needed rest. Since that's what the topic sentence says, the causes are going to explain why students will get much needed rest. All right, and then we'll do effects. So the causes say students often stay awake longer doing homework. As a result, they go to bed late and get less sleep. If school starts at a later time, let's get rid of that comma there. Students are not required to awaken as early because they are not required to leave the house to go to school. Therefore, students will be able to sleep longer. Okay, and so what did this explain? This explains the reasons why students will get much needed rest. Now the part in blue would be the effects. Okay, so in other words, what happens as a result of students getting much needed rest? So I revisit the topic sentence and I explain what happens as a result. Okay, so what happens as a result of students getting much needed rest? Okay, it says when students get the extra rest, it causes them to have more energy and be more alert. They will have an easier time focusing, retaining information they learn. They will earn better grades and have a more positive experience. Let's fix the spelling in this. Experience in school altogether. Okay. So causes and effects. This is the first part. This is the explanation of the body paragraph. Okay? Hopefully that's clear. Now, if we're going to write an example for this, what we have to do is we have to choose, remember, an example is specific to the explanation. It's a specific. So what we do is we look at something that we mention in the explanation that we can give a specific for. Okay? That we can give a specific for. And then we explain the same thing only for that specific that we chose. So what we did is we looked at this explanation and said, okay, which one of these could we give a specific for? So we said, you know what? We could give a specific type of homework. Now, homework would be something that we could give a specific for. Okay, so that's what we did. Well, here it is. Let's go ahead and just kind of bring it back up. Okay. And so the first thing to do is take one sentence and announce it. This can be seen when students do projects. So this is the example. Okay, do science projects. This can be seen when students do science projects. So what is the specific type of homework that we chose? We chose science projects. Okay? As a specific kind of example. Just like leopard is a specific type of animal. Just like bread is a specific type of food. Science projects are a specific type of homework. Okay? So all we did was we took this and picked something more narrow to discuss. And you're going to notice we say the same things in this example that we pretty much say in the causes of our explanation. Pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference is we're going to discuss it specifically for science projects, since that's the example that we chose. So this can be seen when students do science projects. That's one sentence, so we framed it. We announced what the example was. Okay, just like we said, always frame your example. So we just use one sentence to announce it. So I'm just going back to it. This can be seen when students do science projects. And now the rest of the example. Science projects require students to analyze experimental data and write reports. Completing these detailed assignments can require lots of time, causing students to go to sleep often after midnight. If school starts later, students will have the time to complete projects such as these without losing much needed rest. Okay. So, notice all we did was explain a little bit about science projects specifically, but then we say the exact same thing. Completing these detailed assignments can require lots of time, causing students to go to sleep often after midnight. Where have we heard that before? Well, that's very similar to this right here. As a result, they go to bed late and get less sleep. So pretty much giving you making the same case in the example that we made in the explanation. If school starts later, students will have time to complete projects such as these without losing much needed rest. Okay? So that is a good way to do examples. Okay? Now, just for good measure, we'll look at another example of an example. Here's another one. Here's my thesis. It says exercise is one of the best things a person can do for their body. So that's the idea that we're arguing. And if you look at the topic sentence, what does it say? Exercise makes the body feel better. Okay? All right. Somebody would get me on literal word choice and say exercise causes the body to feel better. They'd say, hey, Mr. Claiborne, that's not literal. So I'll just change it. Causes the body to feel better. There we go. All right. And I got to change it here if I do that. Causes the body to feel better. Okay. So now we write our explanation, which is causes and effects. Okay. Or how and why. And so we say, in other words, why does exercise cause the body to feel better? So we explain that. When a person exercises, their body does extreme activity. This causes stress in their muscles. As a result, chemicals called endorphins are released into the body that cause the body to relax. Therefore, the person feels less stressed and more composed. Okay? Well, that's the causes. And then we give you causes here. And I'll just put that in green like normal. And then effects. People who are relaxed tend to focus better. They have more positive interactions with others and are more likely to generate success in whatever they're doing. Okay, so those are the effects of what happens as a result of exercise causing the body to feel better. Okay? Well, now we need to pick something to give an example of. So remember, examples are specific to the explanation. So we decided, you know what? We can give a specific type of person or group of people. And that's kind of what we did. We decided, we'll give you an example of a person or group of people. And so we did this down here. For example, many athletes. Well, that's a specific type of person. Okay? Notice that they sleep very well on the days they have long athletic workouts. This is because endorphins are released during their workouts and cause their bodies to relax so that they rest more efficiently. This aids their performance in competition. Many track athletes report having the best sleep, which is also good for the body. So we just kind of give you, a more specific, narrow tailoring of the explanation to athletes. Okay, we just kind of narrow it to athletes because they are our example. They are the example of a specific person. Okay, so just like bread is a specific type of food, leopard is a specific type of animal, science projects are a specific type of homework, athletes are a specific type of person. All right, so all we did was just make sure the example is specific to the explanation. Pick something in the explanation that you mentioned that you can give a specific for, okay? And it sounds good. We did one more. And I'll admit this is not the most scholarly. It's not the most scholarly of them, but it does kind of prove the point, at least, right? And so the thesis says kids should definitely watch SpongeBob SquarePants. All right. I don't know if you capitalize pants and SquarePants, but I guess I'll just leave it the way it is. All right. And so the topic sentence is a reason why to support this thesis. Okay. So it says SpongeBob teaches kids about marine life. And so, so I'm watching this, be like, Mr. Claiborne, that does not happen. We're just using this as an example, okay? All right. So topic sentence says SpongeBob teaches kids about marine life. Okay. And now we need the explanation of what happens and, causes and effects. So the show features, this is why it does. Why does SpongeBob teach kids about marine life? Well, the show features many characters in the show that are considered marine life. By watching SpongeBob, children learn the names and shapes of different animals that live underwater. Okay, so very, very elementary explanation, but we're getting to our point. As a result, they know more about different marine animals that they can learn about in science and biology class or oceanography. And so we give you causes and we give you effects, right? And so I'm just going to go causes and we give effects. And so this is very elementary format. So what we had to do is we had to pick something in the explanation that we could give a specific for, an example. So we decided to do it for specific character and animal. They're kind of the same thing. Character and animal are kind of the same thing. And so that's what we do. For example, Squidward is the name of one of the main characters. His character is a squid, which is a marine animal that many kids know very little about. The show illustrates what squids look like along with many other different types of marine life that are characters in the show. So this is obviously not the most scholarly, but it does follow the pattern. And I just want you to see what it looks like when you build an example as an illustration of something you're saying in the explanation. I feel like this fits better than using something hypothetical or just trying to make up something. Okay. Instead, use something specific. That way it already exists. And you don't have to make up anything. You can just pick something that's specific and then say the same thing about that specific thing that you explained in the explanation. Just tailor it towards the specific thing that you chose. Okay? That's how I show students how to do examples. And so the whole paragraph, if I just got rid of this word example here, it looked like this. And let me just kind of get rid of everything. And the whole paragraph would look like that. And that would be it. This right here. Okay? Great way to build a body paragraph with the scholarly example. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me go ahead and get back to the main screen. Hopefully that was pretty simple. If you do have any other questions, if you do have any, I won't say other questions, any questions at all, feel free to let me know. I want to thank you again for tuning in, and these resources can be available if notified. I'm glad to share them. All right, thanks again and again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.